do this. All right, before I forget. I want to have a blank screen during that here.
Yeah, June 12th. Yeah, that's when I sent them.
It's okay, very good. Good evening, everybody. It is Tuesday, June 30th. And welcome to tonight's scheduled meeting of the Whately Planning Board. So I call the meeting to order at 5:33 p.m. And our first item of business is reviewing and approving minutes of 2 prior planning board meetings. And so the first meeting took place on April 28th. And the second meeting took place on May 5th. Both sets of minutes have been, when prepared them, I reviewed and edited them, and then clean copies have been circulated, so I considered them complete and accurate for whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
So give you a chance to cogitate and
I
then,
was good with the minutes.
so we'll do this one at a time, one meeting at a time, so focusing on April 28th. And if somebody wants to then move to approve minutes or offer an amendment.
I said May 5th here.
Yeah.
So really detailed minutes.
Yes, because it's public hearing, right? Yeah, we want to make sure
Yeah.
that we've captured that.
I say that because we do not get any close to this detail for the assessors board.
Yeah.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't know.
It's a one-line item,
Yeah,
so it's like, I don't know, looked at an abatement of a certain property.
yeah.
It's not deep detail as to what we saw there.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it's a good question. Probably more is better, I would imagine.
Well, in general, we're trying to keep minutes pretty short and sweet. But public hearings, related to zoning matters that we vote on it, we've wanted to err on the side of being more detailed
That's fine.
because it's subject to attorney general review, and so I want to just be clear about who said what.
Oh,
we
absolutely.
discussed.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
And Gwen was great about putting in a lot more detail.
I see it all, I mean, just.
Yeah.
I know, just goes on and on. It's like a real page
Well,
turner.
does,
Take your eyes off.
The ZBA, I had to be really detailed during their public hearing.
Really?
I got to 10 pages.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, yeah. It was
They're
exciting.
very old school there.
That's okay. Nothing wrong with old school, at
No.
least.
So you want to make for the 28th,
For April 28th.
we'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the Whately Planning Board for April 28th meeting, 2026.
Circulated.
Second
You'll
that.
second that?
Yes.
Okay, motion is made and seconded. Well, we're all physically here, so all in favor? Aye, that's a quorum of 3, so unanimously approved. So we'll move on to the minutes of May 5th, which is when we closed the public hearing. No, we did. Yes, we closed the public hearing.
I'm good with that one too.
Most of the heavy lifting on the battery storage bylaw was
Yeah,
done
yeah.
in April.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the Whately Planning Board for May 5th, 2026.
I'll second
All
that.
right, all in favor? Aye. All right, unanimously approved. Minutes are approved. And it's worth noting that at town meeting on June 2nd, both of our zoning bylaw amendment proposals, one pertaining to battery storage and the other the complementary modifications to the solar facilities bylaw, those were both, I think, unanimously approved. So yay for us, we got that done, and now that's over. All of those have been sent up. Hey, Laura, we're just wrapping up the minutes. And so now all of those 2 bylaw amendment proposals have been sent over to the Attorney General's office for AG review. This is all the work that we did for a long time on battery storage is now done and dusted and hands of the Attorney General. And I think all, and I think since our last meeting, we did get word finally from the Attorney General's office regarding the special town meeting amendments that we made to exclude battery storage above tier one from the Aquifer Protection District. And I have been a little holding my breath on that one to see if that would be considered reasonable regulation. I relayed to all of you that I had a phone call with an assistant attorney general, and she didn't pledge anything, but said that it seemed like that would be considered reasonable regulation, and indeed, so that's all done. So now we're just waiting for that fix from last November to get into the published zoning bylaw on the website. We did finally get the floodplain overlay district. If you remember, we did that a year ago, June. And it just a couple of weeks ago, finally, we do these code updates apparently twice a year. There's a contractor, general code, I think is finally, anyway, so now that's all official.
Good.
So we're all kind of caught up, and now there's more to be reviewed and another update to come. So that takes care of minutes. We have all the planning board members that I was expecting tonight. I guess I did have one question for you, Laura. Have you been contacted by the town? Today is the last day of your planning board member term.
I was contacted to re-up my term,
Okay,
so, and I said I would,
and you said you would?
yes, I think I might have to go get sworn in again.
Yeah, you'll probably,
Okay, yeah.
not probably, you will have to
Yeah.
get sworn in again, okay.
But
Still,
the three of us were up, right?
yes, that's all been
So who
done.
got the 2-year term?
I'm 28, so I guess I'm,
You're the 2
You
years.
must be, because I got the 3, because Joyce asked me, I think I got signed in, I did.
yeah, I think,
I have not been reappointed to finance
I
yet.
think if I look. I'll
So I
take-
volunteered for the 2-year if needed.
Okay, well, I know that was just ultimately left up to Joyce. Lord, I'll tell you what's currently showing. I'm just rather than sharing it, it says you, JD, your term ends June 30, 2029.
Okay.
Mine ends June 30, 2028.
Okay, all right,
And Laura is still showing 2026.
she'll be 29.
Mike Usted is 2027,
Yeah, the one's like,
and Mike Mahar is also 2028.
perfect.
All right,
Good.
so we've got a
We don't want 3 in 1 year.
We've got a spread. That's a very
Good.
manageable spread.
Awesome, nice, good.
Okay, so with that, the next top item for our agenda is to review the comprehensive plan for Whately, which we've had a few shots at. And I said possibly vote on approval, but I think that's hopefully we would vote on whether or not to approve. So Megan Rhodes from the Franklin Regional Council of Governments, please update us, tell us.
Yes, so I'll do a quick recap. We're here to wrap up a several-year process of comprehensive planning. So we divided this process up into 2 phases. The first phase was public engagement. We went to a survey in which almost a quarter of all households responded.
Yeah, that was really a pretty.
We did some open houses. We took all of that public engagement, and then for the past year, have been doing technical analysis, demographic work, looking at all your past plans and studies, and synthesizing that into a comprehensive plan. So we have a plan that looks at agriculture, transportation, economic development, housing, all of the good stuff that a town cares about.
And land use.
And land use and zoning is most importantly.
Oh.
And this is, so we have the plan, which is kind of a summarized version of a lot of detail, which is the technical reports, and that's the appendix. So if someone really wants to dive into and see all the detailed analysis, they can do that. Or if they just want the highlights, they can go to the plan. I've handed out, there's hard copies here, of just the recommendations section of the plan. So that,
And this is all available online. Maybe what I'll do,
Rural roots and bright futures.
Okay, bright futures,
Yes.
that's what I missed.
Yeah, it's all available on whatelyplans.org.
Okay, all available, okay.
Yes.
yeah, so what I'm just sort of for the public record,
Oh, thank you.
I
appreciate that.
shared on the website what the URL is.
Oh,
And if you go to whatelyplans.org, review comment, then you can see all of this. And it looks like down at the bottom,
Except for the top.
well, yes,
Oh, yeah.
but down at the bottom,
Yes.
you can download the visioning survey results. And it was, I knew I had downloaded the whole plan of the PDF.
Oh, yeah, the Western.
Yeah, it should be right there at the top, the final comprehensive plan available.
And this is the.
So,
final
okay.
for
And
draft.
these are,
The final draft.
The final draft.
Tonight, I'm hoping there'll be a vote to approve it for the actual.
Okay.
Take the
I
draft.
just wanted to make sure I got this.
Yes.
so please continue.
Yes, so, when we completed the plan about a month and a half ago in May. And throughout the whole process of creating the actual plan, we met with both the planning board and the select board to check in, see if the chapters jived with what they were seeing, if there had been any feedback. Once we finished the plan, we sent out postcards to every single household in Whately, letting them know the plan was available on the website to let us know if they had any comments or questions. We then held an open house at the library on January 6th. There was an ice cream truck there. That was awesome. And we got about 30 people that came and provided some great feedback. All of it was positive. We didn't really have anything to change. It was all kind of affirmation of what was in the plan, which was great. And so now we're here to you to see if you would like to approve the final plan. Per state law and Massachusetts General Code, the planning board is the authority over comprehensive plans. And to have an official approved plan, the planning board must approve it. So with that, it's up to you guys as to whether you want to endorse this as a vision for Whately. I'm happy to go into any of the details and recommendations.
And
There's
we've
a lot in
seen,
there.
there've been,
You have-
and we've seen all these
Yeah.
different chapters, they've had a chance to discuss those. And there've been, how would you describe any sort of substantive changes that have taken place in the last month or?
Nothing really, no. There have been no substantive changes. We've just kind of.
No
touched
new
things up.
recommendations
No,
we need to know about?
no. And so the hope is that you have these recommendations, that it could be a pulled out section. So the planning board can take it and kind of look at it as their to-do list. The ag commission can look at it as their to-do list, and whatever, different boards and committees, the energy committee can then take a look and see what is it that they can accomplish over the next 10 or so years. And use it as a guide and framework for how they handle the solution.
So is this a guide and a recommendation, or is this a rule of law?
There is nothing, statutory or authoritative about it. It is a guide, it is a blueprint,
It's non-binding.
yes.
Okay,
There
it's
is,
like I see in here, there's a thing in here about creating a backup power source for the wells, because we have our municipal water system. But the prior administration on the select board didn't want anything with fossil fuels. They wanted to buy like 10 tractor trailer loads batteries to run the wells. It's not feasible in this town, but we're a green community. So I don't want to be locked into not considering other sources of power by adopting this. That we can only use a battery and not look at something else. Because that's.
so this, yeah, so this is advisory, this is kind of a guide, a blueprint for how you make
Okay.
decisions. But it does also have, if you have things in here and you want to apply for grant funding as they
Okay.
come out, it gets you points. It says, listen, we identified that we need a backup power source and a comprehensive
Okay.
plan. And that will help you secure that funding.
And the other thing, and it's not a criticism, but I'm on the finance committee and we're coming up very close on having to have an override in this town. And
I'm
there's
sorry,
an
big
awful lot of hiring consultants and stuff like that in this plan. There's hiring consultants and experts and things like that. We don't have money for it.
Well, you could hire consultants like us through grant funding.
Okay, that's,
Yeah.
I just,
You don't
I don't wanna make sure, I don't wanna obligate the town to something.
No.
Something we gotta find money in
There's
our
other
operating budget.
mechanisms to hire,
Okay,
yes.
Okay, I just wanna make sure we're clear
We
on
can
that.
do things for free.
Okay. This is, we're getting stretched pretty thin right now.
This essentially took feedback from town residents, right, of what people felt was gonna be valuable
Yes.
to the town moving
Yeah.
forward, compiled it into a
100%.
plan, and now we're just accepting the feedback essentially and saying, we recognize this plan, we're on board, this is the vision of the community.
Yeah, but we try to distill, I mean, not every idea got in there, we
Sure.
gotta make sure they're feasible,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
somewhat practical, there might potentially be grant funding for something down the line. It also, you know, you have a lot of planning efforts you've already done on different specialized topics, and so. You know, one plan might not speak to the other plan, so we try to reconcile those within this.
Yeah.
I'll say that I really appreciate the work that FLCOG has done on all of this. It's real, just a slog to, go through this whole process over the time and get this feedback and organize and bring your own technical wisdom and judgment to the process. I'm often reminded of the fact that none of us are elected, right? We're all appointed. So nothing that we do on this board, we can't say that we ever came in onto this board with a community supported platform, right? We didn't run for election on anything.
Right.
So, I mean, and there are pros and cons, right? There are different towns that have elected planning boards and we happen to be an appointed one. But I've often been concerned, like, so what does this mean for me or for all of us on the planning board? We shouldn't be coming in with a particular axe to grind. And even if we do, you can't say we had the community behind us because we didn't get a chance to articulate. So what I like about this kind of comprehensive plan is that, of course, I very much like the fact that it is non-binding, that it's advisory. It's like, this is what where the town might like to go. And I feel like as we start to think about other things, we bring our judgment about what things might need to be changed in our zoning bylaws. Well, now we have a document that has some community backing and support and some expert professional judgment driving its creation. Where now, if we propose something like, I got interested in the whole creating new financial opportunities for our agricultural. And, like, what if we were to do a project there? Well, whatever that might be, now I know. You could refer to this plan and say, well, the planning board is undertaking this project because it represents something that the residents, who we often don't hear from directly.
Yeah.
They supported this idea. And I've always been concerned when we go to a town meeting with a zoning bylaw amendment, like even the battery storage one, where there was relatively little public engagement. There are a few people who cared about it. But I didn't know how representative those concerns were of the broader community and not attending this meeting. What does that really mean? So again, I just feel like having this kind of plan gives me a much more confidence in what we might be going forward.
I agree, Brian, as long as it helps and doesn't hinder
Yeah.
us solving the real problems that we have
Right,
financially, like. We got a tech school to pay for.
Yeah.
We gotta buy a fire truck, we
right,
got a highway garage,
right.
we gotta put a roof at the elementary school, we gotta put a boiler at the elementary school. And if these opportunities, if doing this helps us get funding opportunities for solving those problems, that's awesome. I just hope it doesn't create a roadblock to it.
Yeah, no, that's
As long
right.
as there's a roadblock to solving those financial problems that we have, then I'm all for it.
And I looked at it, I mean, I absolutely endorse
Yeah.
what you're saying here. Of course, I spent a lot of them just looking at the land use piece of this.
Yeah.
Because often where this board can do the most good for the community is removing barriers to things that the community would like to see removed. Because our zoning bylaws prevent things from happening. I think too often zoning has been used, sort of fear-driven, understandably, but fear-driven, like, we don't want that, so
Right.
let's ban that.
Right.
Instead of really thinking, how can we use zoning to enable our community to grow in certain ways?
Right, I see a lot of NIMBY.
Yeah, right?
You see a lot of.
NIMBY.
At your house, it's actually at my house.
Yeah, right,
We have a lot of that.
right.
But
Everywhere.
but we need new growth in this town.
Yeah.
In the worst way, the financially, we need new growth.
Yeah.
Our costs are going up 4 to 7% a year, we're going up 2.5, and we're eating into the levy limit cap that we have, so.
Yeah.
But we need new growth, and if that means that we have to accept smaller frontages or creative spaces where you have 100 feet of frontage, but you have 300 acres in AR2,
Right.
to allow us to do that, that's the reality where we gotta go, because the town needs it.
So I think this way, we can go to a town meeting and say, we developed this bylaw amendment proposal that will have this effect, like we're at reducing
Mhm.
frontages or whatever. Say, it's for this reason and it's consistent
Right.
with the plan. It's not like something 4 or 5 of us came up with
Right.
in the middle of the dark of night and said, we 5 think this is best for Whately. So I really like this plan, and so I'm all in favor of accepting it. And I would like to not be the one to make that motion as chair.
That's okay. If I could ask one quick.
Yes,
question.
please.
It's
The
interesting.
floor is open for comments and questions.
Thank you. It says that one of the, improve the financial viability of farming in Whately, remove the excise tax on farm animals and farm equipment. I'm on the assessors board. We have done that. And we're about to do the same thing for farm equipment. But we've discovered that we may have not run this all the way up to we've run it up to the board, the select board,
Yeah.
but it might not have gotten a town vote.
Going to.
And we removed that a year ago. We didn't want to count cows anymore, so. Ducks or whatever.
Right.
So that's interesting that this found this way in here. This is something you knew about.
So, I can't take credit for this entire plan. There was quite a few staff at the first time we worked with this,
Yeah,
so.
okay.
One of our coworkers, Tamsin, worked closely with the Ag Commission,
Oh.
and that was one of their suggestions.
Oh, good. And we completely agree. We just want to make sure we follow it up the appropriate
We
line.
just gotta check that off.
We don't think the town voted on it. I think select board has,
Yeah.
but I don't remember it at the last. So our next meeting is to
Okay.
tie that up, get that. Please.
I mean, this is the thing about this plan. It speaks to a lot of different
It does,
boards,
yeah.
committees, and constituencies.
Yeah.
And there's something in it for everyone. We just happen to be the body that is authorized or required by law to be the one that approves it on behalf of the town. But we can trust that you had appropriate engagement with all the other stakeholder boards and committees, so nobody would be surprised by anything that's in here. Okay, sounds great. I'm loving it, ready to start thinking about how we act on, take some of this under advisement. Does anyone want to have any other comments or questions, or otherwise maybe someone make a motion to approve the comprehensive plan?
I make a motion to approve the plan that's been submitted to us tonight on June 30th.
Okay. Motion's been made by Mike,
I'll second it.
seconded by JD. We're all physically here, so we can just do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Unanimously approve again. Well, congratulations. I mean, doing a nice piece of work.
Yes, congratulations to the town, having fun.
And so,
So it's a good thing.
yes, it's good to have a plan. And of course, there's plans have to meet reality, but it's very helpful. And just, I want you to please pass on on behalf of planning board and others represented here, pass on our thanks and appreciation to all the other staff at FERCog who worked on this plan for us.
You're most welcome. And I will say to, Janie, your point about financing. So through working this plan, I learned more about the town than I didn't know before. And I now know very in detail, like Christian Lane Bridge, the culvert needs to be replaced. And I understood more of what happens there. I just happened to hear about some funding that potentially could be used for that. I passed it along to Caroline, who I have a good relationship with.
She is
She and
fantastic.
Garrett are trying to figure out how they can secure this funding. So
That's awesome.
it is coming together, hopefully.
Yeah, yes.
You're welcome.
And that's in the plan, so again, there's
Yes,
a reason.
yes.
It's great.
I have a hard copy of the
Okay.
plan, so
All
I'll
right.
leave it with you.
Okay, all right.
That's online, right?
It is all over.
And that is-
And well, I will be taking all the word draft
I'll
off.
just say, I happen to love the title.
Okay. Yeah, so we had that out for a vote, and that was that was what your residents voted for as the title.
Hey.
So,
Okay. Yeah. No. Very good. All right.
Thank you.
Future so bright, gotta wear shades.
There you go.
All right, have a good one, guys.
All right, have a good night, Megan. Thank you so much. Okay. And so before you leave, if you want your own physical color copy of the plan to enjoy before
You're from the
bedtime.
newspaper,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so that's that. The next item, and I know we have
Food truck.
Caroline, food trucks. You just, Caroline, you're out there? Yeah.
I am, I'm here.
All right, very good. So Caroline,
I just gave you a kudos. You do a great job, Caroline.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And also, just to say, working with Megan was wonderful for the comprehensive plan. She secured us some very delicious ice cream for the open house. I enjoyed it very much. It was great.
Nice.
so I'm not gonna stop sharing that. Okay, so our next item is this potential possible commercial use of 268 State Road for food trucks. If, just to remind you where that is, the end of Swamp Road on Route 5, you come down Swamp Road to 510 by Zanoni's, the
Yeah.
auto
Yeah,
place.
yeah, yeah.
Right across the street, that
Yeah.
seemingly vacant lot.
The
That's
mayor.
The
Snowmobile.
DeMayo
parking.
This is not the Castaway lot.
is
No,
not the Castaway.
It's that
That
van,
should be a
that,
restaurant.
remember that restaurant that burnt down?
Yeah.
It's that
Snowmobile
lot,
parking is.
The
that,
town owns that property.
The town
Oh.
owns that property. And I will share with all of you, because I'm also on the housing committee, that the housing committee has been using CPA funding to fund Berkshire Design Group to do some technical assessments of that property to
Okay.
see what could be feasible in terms of a multi-unit affordable housing development.
Oh,
Okay.
interesting.
But why did
All
they
right.
call it town?
So the
The
town,
town took it for taxes.
I just need to get it anymore. I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
so the structure's been raised, there is there's still the vestiges of some septic system underground.
So Caroline, someone's approached the town about putting food trucks there, or the town is thinking that they can make profit off of putting a food truck there?
The town is thinking that we could make some additional revenue off of renting the land to food trucks, potentially up to 4 at a time.
How much money are we going to receive for these food trucks?
Well, so we're trying to follow similar models of similar towns that have done this already. So Greenfield has a similar model. I have yet to bring this to the select board to set said rates. My first step
Okay.
was to get approval from the planning board that our zoning would allow for food trucks to be at that lot. Hence why I am here today on the agenda.
I have some concerns. One is about sanitation. Because septic and accessibility and all that stuff. But also, these food trucks are competing with Whately businesses that are paying property taxes. So they're competing with Tom's Hot Dogs and Muffins Market and the filling station and the Whately Inn. We're paying all sorts of taxes to sell their food, and they're not paying any of those taxes.
They would be paying other kinds of fees to.
It's not
rent.
really fair to them, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, so this deciding, so let's be clear about scope of the conversation.
Okay.
You know, like, right now, we're having a conversation that's strictly through the lens of zoning,
Okay,
all right? And other stakeholders in the community have
what is the problem?
another lens about this. All right, so this is where I'm doing,
Good.
first I wanna make sure that Caroline has had a chance to share anything else about where this project stands before. I mean, I can tell you some things that I've looked at, because I've been alerted that this was gonna come.
What is it zoned?
It's zoned commercial.
It's zoned commercial.
It is zoned commercial.
We don't have a use for food trucks anywhere, do we?
We never
We
did,
never did.
but I will show you,
Okay.
I'll pop up the code and show you. But so where I'm interpreting this question is town staff have kind of come up with this, the light bulb's going off, like, could we, this is right now a vacant, unused parcel of land at 4 acres. The town is spending money, you might say, or losing money by not having it used. It was at one point being considered as a place for the not the transfer station,
I recommend.
A new highway garage might go there, but it's a challenging parcel of land. It's got wetlands.
Right.
It's the buildable portion of it is limited, it's near a floodplain. And there's been a lack of knowledge about what you could really do with it. Right now, there's been nobody in the town with any sort of time or interest or energy to investigate what could we do with this land, so it just sits there, right? So the housing committee got kind of the B&R bonnet, like, well, let's try to decisively figure out whether any kind of affordable housing could be done there. But we couldn't answer that question without understanding things about what kind of septic could be done
Right.
there, and, you know, we had to. So that is an ongoing process, and the town knows about it, and if the housing committee were to conclude like, yeah, we could really do some kind of feasible, affordable housing project of a reasonable scale on that land, that might be the way this goes.
Right.
But even if that were to happen, that's a multi-year, possibly decade or two process. The whole thing in Sunderland was like a 20-year effort. All right, so in the meantime, this town has this land. All right, so is there anything else about where you are or where the town is and you're thinking about this? Or do we want to now have a conversation about what our zoning bylaw might say about this? Because I'm prepared to have that, but I want to not make sure you've shared what you want to share, Caroline.
I guess the only other thing that I'll share is sort of the catalyst for this conversation was that we had a food truck driver come to the town offices who had been parking at Chi and Chong's their food truck, and they had been asked to leave and find a new spot. And so we at the town offices were sort of trying to help them brainstorm where else they could park their truck, basically. And so that's sort of where this whole idea came from.
So, Kelly, did they rent that space up at the Sugarloaf Shops? At the Cheech and Chong's, or did they just squat
They
there?
had an
and do it?
agreement with the owner. I'm not sure about the details.
Okay, so let me share, so now let's really zero in on this as a zoning question.
Okay.
So I'm sharing right now with our table of use regulations. Under commercial uses, you will see two things that are relevant, and I'm gonna tell you one of them isn't. So the first one, eat-in restaurants, bars, or lounges for serving food or drink inside the building would not apply. I mean, my conclusion is that if you allowed some number up to 4 food trucks, and you could address all those other concerns that are valid concerns, then that wouldn't be an eat-in restaurant. However, we do have a commercial use for takeout or drive-in food services. So that I think would very likely apply. And also, let's be clear, right now, Caroline, you know, we, the planning board, can give you an opinion tonight.
Mhm.
That is, you can take it for what it's worth. Ultimately, it's our zoning enforcement officer, the building inspector, that would really be able to tell you yay or nay that he would agree with that opinion, all right? So right now, I'm just sharing with you what I think is my opinion and what might happen next. So I think most likely we wouldn't treat each truck as its own use. We treat the lot as being used as a takeout or drive-in food service. That would be the principal use on that parcel, right?
Similar to the ice cream store at Long Plain,
Oh, Simmers?
Simmers.
Oh, that's.
Well, I know, I understand,
Yeah.
similar to across from the butterfly shop.
Yes, like the
Something like that.
locomotive, yeah.
That seems more,
Well, no, those are buildings, those are established.
They are,
I think
it's a small
that
building they put on.
locomotive would be treated, if it were in Whately, as an eat-in restaurant.
Right.
Because even though they have outdoor seating,
They have a little food truck, like a coffee truck that's
Right.
parked outside, but I think
Right.
I agree,
I
I don't know
think
if it's
it's
exactly the same, yeah.
And if I could just ask one more question,
sure.
if we're looking for revenue, I mean, what's the land worth?
Well, yes, there's always the question is, should the town just sell it?
Just sell it.
But,
If it's commercial, it's probably worth
and
a
it
good amount of
might,
change.
you know,
And then you get your taxes.
so, and that's of course not a zone, you know, that's not a
That's-
housing committee's concern. And there's an open question is, would the select board, who's got plenty of other things to worry about, are they going to be like, yeah, we're gonna now spend some time and energy putting this parcel of land up for sale? When?
As a resident, commenting, well, why don't you just sell it? To his point, it's like not only you can get money, but it would also support more businesses possibly coming into Whately and paying taxes, just like JD's concern
No,
is.
I don't, again, I hear these comments, but I really wanna keep tonight's conversation, we're not adjudicating.
Right,
Like,
right, we have no
if,
control
if
about that.
zoning, really one question, if zoning said this is prohibited, then end of story.
Right,
What I'm trying to say is that based on my interpretation of our zoning bylaw,
yeah,
it would be treated as a take-out or drive-in food service. And that is allowed in the commercial district by special permit, and that also would require site plan review by the planning board.
I disagree.
You disagree with?
I disagree on that because I think that this commercial use is based on a structure that is selling something, a permanent structure.
It's not a permit, a food truck would.
Our code is indicating a permanent structure in my mind. This, we're building something that's permanently gonna be there. That's a takeout, like a Tom's Hot Dogs.
I don't think that's what I think you're misunderstanding what she's
but-
saying.
I see, sorry, I see it as the Foothills Health District.
Yeah.
We issue permits for temporary food service establishments. And that's what this is, it's temporary, because you can be there one day and not there the next, you go to the next town. And we also allow these, not just in this place, but you could have one at your house for your neighborhood. There's gonna be cases where they're gonna be a really big part, where they're gonna have a function down there, big food trucks down there. We could have food trucks all over town. You have to get a permit from the Board of Health for temporary, inspection for a temporary food service thing. They issue those permits, and that's just for food safety. So you could have that in a residential zone. I could have a wedding in my backyard, bring a food truck in and get a permit for it.
So if somebody, I think the
So
the
I don't
scenario
think
here,
it's a permit
and
structure.
I'm gonna sort of say, I hear you,
Okay.
and your disagreement ultimately, and none of our agreement or disagreement here actually matters.
Okay.
We're having a conversation.
Okay.
Thanks for disagreeing,
Okay.
but it's irrelevant.
Okay,
I'm not irrelevant, that's me. And even whether I agree or not, but, I think the scenario here is that they basically, maybe a town, or however this is paid for, some amount of that parcel is repaved.
Yeah.
So that mobile trucks can set up and stay there for a period of time and then leave at the end of the season, and the town manages all of that and handles all the other issues.
The town-
Then no permanent structures.
the
will
town
be built
leases
there.
the land to these people.
The town might think of it as like leasing a parking spot.
I mean, I guess that's what we don't know maybe at this point, right? Is
Right.
the intention that people are gonna come and park, you know, it's gonna be an ice cream truck and they're gonna be there all summer or whatever? Or is it gonna be, it's Taco Tuesday and we have a great Mexican truck coming,
Right.
you know, this week, and next week it could be somebody else. My opinion is, I think the food trucks sound great, it's something different, it might bring new people into town who might then stop at Muffins to grab a bottle of wine to bring home with their takeout that they just picked up at the food truck, or, you know, it doesn't
Right.
have to be exclusive that they're gonna go to the food truck, so therefore no other business in town is getting any business from these same people anymore. It might be a way that it brings new business into town, and also it's not gonna preclude us from doing something different with the lot in 5 years.
Right.
There's no reason if we can make some revenue on this and it seems relatively quick and easy and low investment for the town. And if, you know, why wouldn't we do that while we figure out a longer term plan for this piece?
Okay.
That's how I look at it.
Good.
And it's,
Yeah.
again, I will say, whether each of us individually likes or dislikes this idea. You've got a valid point, like,
Right.
it could be seen by Muffins or whomever, or Tom's, like an undesirable competition. That's not adjudicated
Correct.
here. All we were doing, and all I would say to Carol, is that based on my, you might say, somewhat educated understanding of our zoning bylaw, I say there is a plausible way to say this could be allowed in, it's in a
In our
commercial
current table
zone,
of use.
with no zoning amendments or whatever, it's not, does not appear to be prohibited. At best, it could be treated as a takeout or drop, however.
Private
this is-
food service.
And it would require the ZBA to, they would have to provide a detailed plan, would have to go before the ZBA like anything else applying for a special permit. And the ZBA would adjudicate whether they would issue a special permit for this use. And a lot of questions would have to be answered before the ZBA would
So they have to
grant
grant
a
site
special
plan
permit.
review.
And they would also have to come for site plan review.
Okay.
And presumably this plan would be developed by town staff, because we here are not developing this plan.
Right.
It's not our job. All,
Because right now, we are requiring like lighting. Handicap.
yeah, all of the rules of site plan review would apply.
Neighbors are gonna listen to generators running 10 hours a day because they don't have
Yeah,
power.
I don't know who
There's
the
not
neighbors
neighbors
are.
that can
Right.
hear.
There's like residents on the other side of the, no, there's two residents there, they're
That's
listening to generators running all day long. There's no running water.
I'll just sort of say, it is a little funny to me that you just moments ago were saying how the town needs revenue.
They
And
do
now
need
you're
revenue.
arguing against a temporary way of bringing in
I don't
revenue.
want to steal business from town, businesses are paying a lot of money in taxes.
But a
Right,
lot of
I
people
mind
would
that.
say, even our new approved plan speaks to how residents want additional restaurants. in
Okay.
town. And any additional restaurant would compete with Tom's, would compete with Muffins, I
They're
mean,
paying taxes.
competition, yes,
They're paying taxes.
yes, I know you want.
They're not paying property taxes.
But again, not.
But
our
right
issue.
now-
These might come in.
Not
This,
our issue.
but this property also right now, I know this isn't even what we're
Yeah,
discussing
right,
today, but
right.
this property right now is just costing us money. It's generating $0.
Negative.
So if we can generate a little bit of money
Yeah.
and maybe we look at, you know, if it goes anywhere down the road, maybe there's some mechanism for if the Whately Inn isn't open Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, do we do food trucks? Maybe there's some happy medium,
Yeah.
you know?
Because the other alternative is that it just sits there.
Right,
Until
costing us money.
the select board decides they're going to act and either put it up for sale. Again, it's not our decision.
Gotcha.
We don't make recommendations of what town owned parcels to sell, not, it's out of scope
Right,
for us.
right.
Right.
So all I'm saying to you, Caroline, is that, my recommendation is that you, or if you are kind of on the pointy end of the spear here, as we used to say in my line of work, if whoever is the driving force behind kind of moving this idea forward, I would say, take this idea to the building inspector and ask whether he agrees that this, you know, general concept you have would be treated this way, that he would agree that it would be handled within Whately zoning as a, you know, takeout or drive-in food service. And if so, then would that require a special permit from the ZBA? That's what I would expect, and that if, so that a plan would have to be developed, it would have to go before the ZBA, and if it would, and then if the ZBA, you know, we probably somewhat do special permit and site plan review in parallel, but if this ZBA, if Tom's and everyone got up in arms and they said, no, we're not gonna give a special permit, it would be done. It would be over.
But how does this go with, you know, Quanquat wanting to bring a food truck in this and serve pizzas or something, or an event at Hurley that wants to bring in a food truck to sell something for an event down there? Are we gonna make them to get site plan review and special permits?
That's
all
really a
that
good
stuff?
question. I mean, it's not the question we're being
So I
asked.
think like food trucks need to be a permitted thing through the select board. They have to have use regulations on what they're gonna allow for food trucks and how long they can be there and start and close ordinances, and whatever the
There's
rules are
probably-
gonna be. And if you wanted to sell your waiters, you go to the select board or Board of Health and get a permit for a food
So
truck.
there's, so again, not our job, but wouldn't disagree with you. But again, you could sort of say if we have an unused parcel of land that's costing the
Right.
town money, and there's an idea where it could fairly quickly be turned into something that would generate some revenue and wouldn't require an indefinite commitment, because you could do this for 1 year and then stop doing it. I mean, it would be entirely discretionary, right? Because the special permit likely would be issued to the town, not to the individual food truck operators. This,
Does that put the town in the food truck business?
it would, or it would put the town into the business of managing that parcel.
That's where I had a question.
But again, not our job.
Understood. Who would do the cost benefits analysis of sale or food truck or restaurant or business? Who would
Who's
do all-
ever developing, imagine
It would be
this was an
us.
outside party,
Right,
like,
whoever's would
they
decide.
would, whoever is the proponent, whoever would be the applicant. In
But-
this case, the town would have to apply, and they would be treated just like any other applicant for a special permit.
Okay, whoever, so it's going to be reviewed. And a
Right.
cost benefit analysis,
Right.
so that when you're done, you can say, you know what, we should sell it, or, and again, it's not even us.
Right,
Right.
right.
Not even-
All you're saying, do food trucks, yes or no, fall under takeout or
There
drive-in
you go.
food service? That's all we need to say.
And I think
It's
it's-
an opinion,
and-
and we think
right.
that.
And our opinion doesn't matter ultimately.
Great.
So really, this is an informal, well, I'm saying, it's an informal conversation. It's valuable because it helps Caroline decide, is this worth investing more time and effort into?
Gotcha.
So this is like a first check-in. Like if we were to say, yeah, there's no way you can do this under zoning, then there might have to be some other mechanism, or they drop it. What I think we're saying is that, so there may be better ways of doing it, like the select board should do whatever and have county council create a general ordinance or whatever. And maybe, I don't know enough about the town,
Sure.
I live in planning board world, right? I don't live in select board world. Maybe they already have a mechanism that I don't know about.
I mean, the foothills clearly does because they permit them, so.
Yeah,
It's an interesting conversation.
It is,
Yeah.
it does raise a lot of points. My opinion is that a food truck could be reasonably considered a takeout or drive-in food service.
Based on current rules.
Yes.
Yeah.
so
Wherever
Carol,
that's where.
I think that's where you go. Go next, I mean, you can take it
Wonderful.
back, Pete, and say like, it doesn't seem like it's prohibited under zoning. There's some reasonable questions that are outside of the planning board scope about how this would work and who would pay for what and sanitation and all of that. But it seems like if you move forward with this, it's gonna be a special permit. The town would apply to the zoning board of appeals for a special permit. And there'd be have to be enough detail for them to be able to decide. And then whatever that plan is would have to go through site plan review, following all of the site plan, meet all of the site plan review conditions outlined in our zoning bylaw. All right,
Thank
Very
you
good.
all.
Have enough information to carry
Yes.
on? Okay, awesome. All right, thank you so much, Carol.
you.
I hope that was helpful.
Okay, hope we made that simple.
Do you
but
want me to hang on for any of the rules and regs, or do you feel like you need
I
me?
will tell you what, why don't we, if you don't mind. Can you hang on for a few minutes? Maybe what I'll do is I'll move item 5 about the planning board rules and regs up to, is that clock accurate? Okay.
Caroline, about the last matter, reasonable people can disagree, so a very
You're
uncertain
at 6:21.
about if it's that the case or not. So I'm still up in these, so we're not unanimous, but that's okay.
Right, but we don't even have to
Well-
vote. Right, just confirm.
I'll get in touch with the building inspector and take the next
He's a-
steps.
He's a good man.
Yeah, and you might even just check in with the ZBA, like what would they expect from all
Yeah.
of this?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, so we're gonna take up item 5 next, the discussion of town council feedback. I've circulated all of that. And I'll give Caroline a chance to comment as well, but I'll say that basically, it seemed like we got a more or less a green light that some recommended changes. Caroline has created a clean copy of that, incorporating all the feedback from town council. My proposal is that we just have a brief conversation about this tonight, but then at our next meeting, whenever that is, we would have a vote on whether to approve these rules and regulations. In the course of looking this over more closely, there was one thing that I thought today that I had just overlooked in the past. I think it was there, and it had to do with the duties and responsibilities of the chair. So you might say I was kind of particularly concerned about that. And it is in section where did I find it? Yes, and section 2. Section 2 is on page. It's really on page 4 of 14, but it's under role of the chairperson. There's a bullet that everything was reasonable. It says perform other duties as assigned by the board or required by law. Done. But then goes on to say, and assume the responsibilities of the community development administrator in the absence of or vacancy in that position. And I suddenly looked at that and I thought, whoa, the community development administrator does a lot of stuff. Like
That's a big position.
it's a paid position. They're the floodplain administrator, and then Caroline and I and Pete earlier today have had a little bit of email around this. And I think we all agreed that the intent of this language was to say, not that the planning board chair takes over the entire functions, but rather just those duties that are assigned to the community development administrator elsewhere in these rules and regs, like the CDA
Sure.
reviews applications for completeness and all that kind of stuff. So we've come up with a little bit of revised wording because I accept the fact that if Caroline is no longer with us, which would be so profoundly sad, unutterably sad. But if there were a vacancy or she was ill for a period, I'm like, yes, the buck stops with the chair, right? So the chair will fill in on doing all those other duties.
Right.
That makes perfect sense. But I'm not gonna become floodplain administrator. Thank you.
You're not coming into work and sitting at Caroline's desk on Monday after she's out.
No, no. So I think we had
That's
agreement
reasonable.
on that. And other than that, this all looked
I'm good with it.
good to me. So, but I did wanna, I mean, unless you all feel like there's a provision in here that says we can't have a vote on changing or any of these things until it's been circulated, and and then you have to have like a meeting and then another meeting. But this is the very first time, so we could technically just vote to approve it tonight. But I'm comfortable, I don't necessarily feel it's so urgent that we can't just say, we're now aware of it, we've had this conversation about this revision. Caroline's gonna implement that revision and circulate a new copy to all of us. And then, and of course, Mike Mahar isn't here tonight, so we're missing one member. I'd rather
I was
ideally
gonna say that too.
have a vote.
Yeah,
when
everybody's here.
everybody's here.
Yeah, let's table that till Mike is back.
Okay, all right. Do you have anything else to add to the conversation of you did incorporate all of town council's feedback and stuff that looked good to me. Okay.
yeah. Thanks, Caroline.
I just
Alright,
needed to be here in case there were any questions, but thank you all. I hope you have a great rest of your meeting.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Thank you so much. All right, have a good night, Carol. All right, so now we'll move back to this other item about social consumption of cannabis. And this is just, again, a sort of a little informal conversation. I'll explain where this came from. I don't know if I circulated this email.
I don't know if I saw it.
But on June 9th, Pete, our town administrator, forwarded to me an email from the Massachusetts, basically from a government affairs organization about some new item about the Cannabis Controls Commission. action, and basically, the CCC is starting to allow the establishment of social consumption facilities. Where, like right now, you can manufacture, you can grow, you can sell, but you cannot like have a bar where there's social
Right.
consumption on premises, right?
Yeah.
So at the state level, they're starting to allow this as a use, but it's strictly being introduced as opt-in community by community, like we don't. So they're not basically saying it's going to become allowed unless we prevent it. In fact, that we would have to take action as a town. It would require a zoning bylaw amendment if we wanted to allow social consumption to be established in town. So he asked me sort of like, has the planning board had any conversations about this? And I would say like, I will share that my own view of this is a kind of lean against but open for arguments otherwise. Like there's nothing in our plan that says people want more cannabis.
Right,
now.
right.
But so I wanted to just have a very brief conversation to see if something like, what do people think about this? Is this anything we should even put on a list for consideration in the future? Because by taking no action, we're effectively, no decision is a decision here, like,
Okay,
right?
so I thought it was, one of them was this, the other one was the delivery of it, like you could DoorDash weed.
Yeah, that we have already allowed as a use.
You can DoorDash marijuana.
We
Yeah,
have,
Florida,
we passed,
they've come 100 miles to my friends. That's in the beginning of the.
we have,
But I don't where.
yes. I'm not, let me reshare my screen, so you,
And does the police chief have any comments?
well, I haven't asked anybody,
Right,
Like-
this is just like an informal.
right?
It seems off the wall.
I've asked quite a few people about this. There's no way for an officer, when he pulls someone over, that, like, if you go to a bar and you have too much, they can, if it feels sobriety. Breathalyzer to see how impaired you are, there's no test to see how stoned you are.
Yeah.
After you've left an establishment, you
Right.
can't do that at the roadside.
There is,
So there's gotta be
hopefully there
something.
is though. And I do air quotes, cause I've heard that there is something, like there is a type of technology. I don't know if it's like,
They have that.
I think
probably not in the town of Whately,
Right.
but
the problem is more probably like, I mean, you can look at somebody and know. if
yes,
they're-
there's the
and they're
eye
on
test,
something,
yeah.
right, but it's, I think more they can't maybe quantify that you have over-consumed and now you shouldn't be behind the wheel. And if an officer tried to take that into court, I think that's where it probably falls apart from those leaks. Not that they can't identify that somebody's been using whatever, it's that they can't quantify it and don't have
Yeah.
like to
It
stand
stays
on
in your
court,
system for a long time too.
right?
Yeah,
I mean-
And I think the marijuana business is saturated,
Oh, big time.
and the states may be looking to sell more marijuana.
Yeah, it's big
So
time.
they're looking at a way to try to
They're weeding the.
create
trucks
more
out, yeah.
tax revenue.
They're reading things out, yeah.
They're weeding the
Reading
trucks
out.
out.
So we did pass marijuana courier, if you see, you can see my screen. Down here, we have marijuana courier as a principal use, marijuana delivery service as a principal use. Not allowed in AR1 or AR2, but special permit elsewhere. And we had a whole long time, this is like one of the first years I was on the planning board.
Okay, it's probably before JD and I then, but.
Yeah, it was definitely.
Yeah.
And there was a whole lot of conversation, but ultimately, I would say unanimously was approved.
Right.
But,
But if you're just getting something delivered to your own home, in my opinion,
right,
that's your business.
Yeah.
Yeah,
if somebody, the argument there is that if somebody wants to set up in a commercial district, and they are basically going to store saleable merchandise and then deliver it, and then basically they are managing their fleets, it's almost
Right.
like a taxi cab business. And then you have these same concerns about any other business, the adequate security.
Right.
And are they creating a nuisance? All the reasons why we allow these discretionary special permits, they would pass.
Okay, I am.
But social consumption is a
I'm
different.
against the social consumption, for another reason, is that, we don't allow smoking in buildings.
That's true.
Right?
We don't allow smoking for public health,
That's true.
but cigarette smoke is not hallucinogenic. It's
Oh.
horrible for your lungs. But marijuana smoke to bystanders, and we're gonna allow smoking in establishments, but not in bars and restaurants. It's not,
Go back on that, I'm sorry,
we don't allow smoking in bars and restaurants.
we don't.
Yeah, we
But
don't.
but we're gonna allow you to smoke, but we're gonna allow you to go down the street and smoke in an establishment.
That's establishment.
I mean,
Wow.
I think
It
it's
doesn't make-
One
Go ahead.
comment I can think of, like loophole, I don't mean to be opinionated during this meeting, but, if you think about it, we can technically, it can be consumed not only by smoking, it could be eaten.
correct.
Right.
It could be drank,
Could be.
so you can put a limitation under there,
Okay.
like, you can
No
eat
smoking.
gummies or eat brownies
Right.
at the bar, you could do that.
And remember that,
I know, right?
Whately was going to do,
They
they were
wanted,
going to add,
yes. They had a whole special idea.
they
that
had a
wanted.
whole idea about cannabis,
Yeah.
but anyway, but
Used into liquor.
all I'm saying,
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah,
advocating
you
for
correct,
this.
THC.
I really was just trying to get a sense of the
Right.
board, like, is this the kind of thing we
Right.
might want more of in this
I
town?
mean, I don't think that we need this in town, but I would compare it more to like a hookah lounge or a hookah bar, a cigar bar. Right? How different, really, I guess a cigar bar would be the most similar thing I can think of.
Yeah,
Yeah. Maybe not in Massachusetts, but New Hampshire, Florida.
well, there's
I
some,
guess-
yeah, I've seen
Unless
stuff.
police
Yeah.
chief could come in and tell me that he can test on the roadside if CL carries something to protect the public. And hunger there, then
Right.
I'm not
I
persuaded,
think it's
I'm not
something-
inclined to support this right now.
Even if they could,
Yeah.
I'm not inclined to.
I think it's something we need to take an action on. Nobody's asked for it.
No.
I don't think we've,
That, I think, is a key point.
correct.
We'll take action.
Yes, and if somebody does ask about it later on, then we can reevaluate at the time when there's maybe a business plan, it's more concrete information, but I think as of right now, it's not something that it sounds like anyone is interested in trying to add into our table of use for
It doesn't.
property
sound-
tax.
Right.
At what benefit to the town would? it
Yeah.
be, other than possibly some income, I guess.
Right, property taxes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But other than that, is that, it just seems like.
No, I don't think it's, and I don't know that there would be
Not a
buy-in,
like idea.
yeah, I don't think there would be buy-in from the
I'm
Townspeople.
sure there would be. And again, I'm not seeing, like, if this were a different kind of community than it is, something about opportunities for cannabis development might have found its way into our comprehensive plan.
Sure.
But I don't see it there. I don't even see it under agriculture.
No.
And in the absence, this is one of these things where I feel like we shouldn't be just putting these ideas out there without something or some
Right.
advocacy
Right.
on its behalf.
Yeah, I think if somebody approaches us about it, then we can, rediscuss, but I don't think it's an immediate.
As a quick question, is there any towns in Massachusetts that are actually doing this?
Actually, right?
Not that I've heard of, but it sounds like
There were some
there's,
towns that were well.
I don't know much about that.
yeah, or
I
if
mean,
it's
I
just
would,
at the idea stage.
I
kind of
could
thing.
well imagine that, places like Greenfield and Northampton, cities that might want, it
Right,
might fit in better.
I don't see the money.
There's already establishments that are already selling THC or whatever
Yeah,
Right.
stuff.
yeah, but I don't know if they're selling it for on-site,
Like-
on-premise consumption.
you're not supposed to have it here kind of thing.
Right.
Like, I don't know that you could go hear music at the Iron Horse and buy gummies at the bar
Right.
and sit and
Trust
do
me, don't
that.
go there.
Yeah, cause I.
I mean, some of the music might actually start to sound better. When those kids- after an hour.
Like, there's probably nothing stopping from somebody just bringing them in from, you know what I mean? Like-
Yeah, no,
Like, I don't know.
yeah, no, you're right.
Me too, I get it.
Okay. All right, well, now I'm gonna say, we've had that
Yeah.
conversation, and I will just share.
Lots of
with
good
Pete-
food for thought tonight.
Gummies for thought.
Gummies for thought,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right, we can let that one.
With that one.
Okay.
Slip by.
Yes, okay, so the very last item on our agenda is, and we're not gonna spend much time talking about it,
Fine.
is maybe what I'll do. Cause. Is it raining?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Did everybody roll up their windows?
I think I did.
Love the rain.
Yeah, not turn my.
Yeah, we need the rain, that's
I
good.
did not turn my irrigation on, I needed it.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So I'm going after tonight, I'm gonna just do a screen share, because we, now with battery storage behind us, we should start to think about, informed by our comprehensive plan, what our priorities are for work. What new zoning amendments do we feel we want to develop and bring before the town a year from now? Okay. So what I've done, I'm gonna give you a very quick thumbnail sketch. I'm gonna share my screen here. So I'm gonna circulate all of this. Basically, I've come up with a list of, I think, about 10 things that have been like on my mind.
Hmm.
And what I want us to do is, over between now and the next meeting, each of us individually, think about these and come up with your own prioritization. And potentially say there's something really important that's missing from this list that we should take on.
And you are gonna send us that?
I'm gonna send you that,
Very good.
I'm gonna share
Thank you.
on my screen right now, just a graph that I have. Mostly just oriented. So I've created a document that I'll email you all that has, I'll just give you a brief review of some candidate projects that I've just written a few sentences about each one. An ADU bylaw, accessory dwelling unit. Right now, our bylaws are inconsistent with state law. And we've actually now had somebody come and say they want to build an ADU, but they want to do it consistent with state law, but it's not consistent with the zoning bylaw. And basically all we could do is say, well, you know,
I'm building one right now.
yeah, do it like there's no relevant applicable zoning bylaw lately. And that really is a problem. I mean, arguably, it may not be the most important thing that we need to deal with, because the understanding is we're all volunteers, you know, that. As you saw, look how much time and energy we put into one or two things, batteries.
Right.
And that was a very technical topic. Anyway, so there's ADU. There's the question of the solar facilities bylaw. Whether that needs to be reviewed, given that there's a new model bylaw, just like there was for battery storage. I'm not sure that's that important, because I don't think state law is invalidating our existing regulations for solar facilities. But it's an unknown area, like I haven't even asked town council about this. There's a question about mobile homes and recreational vehicles. We have outdated language again in our zoning bylaw pertaining to mobile homes, not even, you know. And we have these provisions that seem to be broadly ignored and unenforced relating to recreational vehicles stored on property, like even in our own neighbor, right? And I'm not even sure that is much of a problem anymore, but it bears,
If everyone had
potentially
one,
bears.
yeah, if everyone had one,
They're not allowed in your neighborhood.
Yeah,
I
but
was gonna
they,
ask that.
but they,
There's
there.
There's two of them that I'm aware
there's
of.
at least two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, that's another question.
yeah, that's another.
That's not us.
Right.
That's the HOA's problem. sounds like.
Yes, it is, though, well, anyway, so then agritourism facility bylaw, like. Townspeople seem to be interested in promoting agritourism, what is that, like, what are the barriers? And how, what that might be, like, I don't know. I don't know if that's agritourism, I mean, they do have an event space. We don't have a, no one's gonna build their own version of Mike's Maze
Right.
over here. But I love Mike's Maze, I especially like the beer maze, I'm all in that.
I just skipped that one.
Yeah, no, you got it, beer maze, it's amazing, literally. And it gets better the longer you're in the beer maze.
Seems that makes sense.
So, but again, I don't know where the Ag Commission is on this. And whether, so anyway, that's a question. Site plan review procedural. This one I actually have already done some work on. And I'll share it when I'm a little bit ready, but basically, our site plan review bylaw requires that we do site plan review as a public hearing. And that requires publication of a legal ad in a paper of record and all of that. State law doesn't require that, but our zoning bylaw bakes that in. And yes, we pass those costs on to applicants. But we could change our zoning bylaws so that we can just do it as a regular meeting. And still have a butter notification at applicant expense, but not have to spend $300, $400, $500. So I'm actually gonna ask you, there's an action related to this for next meeting for you, our land use assistant. I'd like you to gather data on public hearing advertising costs, like for the ZBA. You've done any number of having to put legal ads in the Greenfield Reporter.
Like how much that costs.
How much, yeah, collect all of the costs that you're aware of.
But
Since
those-
you've been in position.
Those charges go to the applicant, right? It's not a charge that's incurred by the town.
Yeah, we have to,
Okay,
but when we do, of course, it's different when we do zoning bylaw
Sure, yeah,
amendments. Those are legally required to be
Yes.
public hearings, and indeed, we have to pay those costs, because there's no applicant.
yeah, yeah.
Right, but so this is just site plan.
I think I had to pay the recorder directly for my legal ads.
And that may have been just a convenience. In theory, we take out the ad and we pass the cost on to
Right,
the
so
applicant.
we are
Well, it
gonna,
has to be, but I pay the bill, town doesn't pay, the bill. I don't pay attention to town.
But
Yeah.
still, you had to pay that cost.
right, if there's a way to
Yeah.
eliminate, if it's an unnecessary cost at this point, we can eliminate it.
Right,
like, for instance, like right now, 421, I see.
so gather that
Like-
information and put it in a form that you could circulate to the members of the board.
Yeah,
Like-
777.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it depends on word count and
Right,
detail and
right.
all that, but it would be worth getting a feeling for what's kind of the average expense that gets passed on to applicants, and if we could eliminate that, why
Right.
not?
Right.
Why not?
Sure.
So that's this. There's the whole interchange 35 overlay district, and, arguably, we can't, I mean, if we were passionate about this as our top priority, and we were all willing to sort of do some research, and get Caroline to do some stuff, maybe we could make progress on an overlay district and figure out, or even, we could make some progress on that, and that might,
I'm on the committee.
that hasn't met for the.
I was gonna say, I thought it was distant.
But, so what committee?
I'm on the exit 35 committee, and one meeting I went to, I was the only one there.
Yeah,
You are the committee.
You are the committee. Get to work,
Right, you figure everything,
Yeah,
chair, vice
right.
chair, the works.
right? So then there's like duplexes by right. This, I think, is a recommendation out of our comprehensive.
Well, that probably meshes with the ADU to a certain extent
Yeah.
too, right?
Right,
So
right.
that those two might be able to be kind of dovetailed
Yeah.
together.
And I need you guys to sort of look at this and think like, do you support that? Like, could you get
I do.
behind this?
Yeah.
Like, some of these things, I mean, I haven't put on the list, like lower frontages, or do the kinds of things that could get people bringing out their tiki torches. I don't know, right? But maybe duplexes by right would be something we could all get behind and we could defend to other residents. Community housing bylaw revisions. I'm always concerned about things that were well intended in our zoning bylaw, but since this community housing bylaw was put in 2, 3 years ago, it's gone unused. Is it too complicated? I don't know.
Right.
Mixed use along the Route 510 corridor, another recommendation out of the comprehensive plan. And I think this 10th one, stormwater and flood resilience updates. So I didn't wanna, I came up with 10 that I thought were, if we could do 1 or 2 or maybe 3 in a year, that
Right.
might be amazing, right? But I wanted to generate some ideas. And I've put at the end of this document, which I'll circulate to all of you, a little thing where you will rank each one of these independently. First, think about it and put your number one, what you think is the most important thing for this planning board to do over the next year.
Sure.
Number 2, number 3, and then I'll have you independently send all of those to me. And then I'll do all the math.
Yeah.
Including my own, and we'll see what the
wins.
wisdom of the crowd tells us.
Cool.
And then we can decide to do that or do something different, all right?
Cool.
And if there's something after you get to look at your own personal copy of this, you're like, oh my God, this is even so much more important than any of these things. We can have that conversation,
Great.
all right? So that's that. I don't believe there are any other topics that were not anticipated within 48. Oh, actually, I will share. There is something though. You didn't contact me about this, so. I had an informal conversation
I was unprepared.
with, so I had an informal conversation with Berkshire Design Group. They have apparently been retained by Chang Farm. They're next to Manhole, right on River Road. And apparently they are planning to put up a small solar electric generating facility on their land that would be of a size that falls just below the special permit requirement from the ZBA, but it would be site plan review by us per our current zoning bylaw. And he said he didn't have any plans yet or anything like that, and that they were hoping to, get this on the planning board's agenda in July. But he sort of was hoping like the site plan review would take place in July, and I reminded him that, well, there's the legal notice.
Right.
All this
All the steps.
stuff. And so I thought he might appear tonight, but he's not here. So I just want you to be aware that that's potentially out there.
Okay.
I had someone reach out to me about a non-conforming lot, not enough frontage. With lots of land behind it,
Okay,
and he says, that planning board? I said, no, that's the zoning board, you need to file a zoning application to building inspector. To go to the CBA and try to get. It's all allow you to do what you want to do, it's not what we do,
right, that's true.
it's not what we did.
So somebody wants to do something on a plot of land, so it would be a zone, they're looking for a variance.
I think so, yeah, they don't have enough frontage
Right.
for, they have an enormous amount of property.
Yeah,
It's just not a street frontage.
oh, yeah.
They're not chestnut plant.
Oh,
So he asked me about it, and I said, that's a zoning board.
right,
They handle those issues.
Yeah.
But I can't give you advice.
right, very good, you did the right thing, JD.
I said, you're welcome to come to our meetings tonight, we're gonna tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else that anyone else has to share before we talk about our next meeting? So,
Oftentimes we skip a summer meeting if there's nothing going on.
well, right, so now the question is, and I don't necessarily, given that nobody has appeared and suggested they need to have anything happening in July, I'll say our regularly scheduled July meeting would be on July 28th. And I guess my question would be, I think we've typically had a July meeting and skipped the August meeting. We're gonna skip one of them, but not both. And my question is, like, I could meet on July 28th. I think on August 25th. Actually, it looks to me like either one of those dates is fine with me. I'm around on both of those dates, but we should just maybe decide now, like, I think if we go ahead with a July meeting, we would already have agreed that we'll skip an August meeting.
I think we should wait to see if something comes in.
Okay.
If something comes in that we need to attend to have our July meeting, we might skip the July meeting. Because if we skip the July meeting, if we have the July meeting and then something comes in the first week of August, if they act on it, then we do August meeting as well. So if we try to skip the July meeting and what, so something doesn't come in.
Yeah, I'm fine with skipping the July meeting. I would prefer to probably skip July. Then that kind of gives us the whole summer. So we end up with July and most of August. We'll meet at the end of August.
But if
you know,
something comes in, we'll hold a meeting.
which is kind of nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be bundled all in August.
What?
Yeah, it'll be bundled all in August.
Or well, we could.
If something comes in,
important,
we actually.
Right, something urgent. We could, or like
Yeah.
pencil in the, July 28th. And then if nothing comes up, we just plan on the August 25th meeting.
Right,
Cancel it.
all right,
Let's schedule the meeting for July,
all right,
and if nothing comes in, cancel it.
okay. So, what we should do per our, I mean, we haven't approved our rules and regs, but if these were in effect, it would say here that the specific meeting date, time, and location may be changed by majority vote of the board.
Okay.
So what I might, like, let's test this out.
Sure.
Like, I think we have a motion and a vote, so just like have a motion
What-
related
what-
to July's.
What is the
meeting.
deadline that we have to have, if someone wants to submit something, when do we have to cancel
That
that?
should be part of the motion. I think it would be reasonable to say that if we don't have any known business by, because I have to think about posting, probably by what, the 21st of July? Because if we knew by the 21st, then we could prepare an agenda and get it posted within the required
Like
window.
48 hours there.
Yeah,
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we postpone our July 28th, 2028 meeting if we have no applications by Monday, July 20th.
okay. So you get that motion?
Yeah, made a
I'll
motion
second
to postpone July.
Or skip,
Skip.
skip the meeting on July 28th
Skip
unless we have
unless.
urgent business.
Yeah, so
We have received notice of urgent business by the 20th of July. So that's the motion.
Yep.
So we're kind of, so, okay, so the motion's been made, has it been seconded?
Mike's not gonna.
Okay, so motion's been made and seconded, so discussion, just to clarify, so. That seems to imply then that we're here and now agreeing that we will meet on Tuesday, August 25th.
Yeah.
That there would be no other occasion.
Right.
To gather and decide like not to have. it.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Sounds good.
All right,
If we
so
have-
motion-
if we end up having a meeting on the 28th, then we can make a
Right,
motion.
we could reevaluate the August meeting.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, all right, so motion's been seconded, all in favor? Aye, all right, motion is passed unanimously.
Motion to adjourn.
And, yeah, motion's been made to adjourn. Okay, motion's made and seconded, all in favor of adjournment? Aye, aye. Meeting is adjourned at 6:56 PM, just shy of our.
I've been trying to get the.
All right, I'm going to turn off the recording.
JD made the motion to adjourn and Mike seconded it.
All right.
We all
Stopping the recording. Good night, everybody.
I can't get the assessment.